So we're going to come on to education very shortly, but I just wanted to pick up on one of the things you said, and you sort of implied that failure is a rudimentary part of ambition and innovation. So what was your biggest failure in business, and how did you come back from it?
Well, you don't get to be successful in life without failing. I wish that weren't the case. It's better to be winning all the time, but it doesn't work that way. So my probably biggest failure came early, and if you're an entrepreneur, which is sort of what I am emotionally, having big failures early can actually be fatal. You want to avoid those if at all possible. And in my case, what happened is it was the third investment that we made, and we didn't have any processes. People would just walk up to my desk and say, I like this, and I sort of thought I was a little like King Solomon, like, okay, do we split that in half, or what do we do? And so I had a case where I could choose between two individuals and their views on an investment, and I picked the one sitting on my right who appeared much more knowledgeable, and that was the wrong choice. And we got in a situation where we basically were going to lose all of our money. And I was called by one of our investors to come and see him, and I sat down in a chair in front of his desk, and he started screaming at me. And in my family, nobody ever raised their voice. I thought that was normal. Apparently, that's odd. But in my house, it was normal, so nobody had ever raised their voice. And this man was screaming at me for what seemed like an endless period of time. I mean, and he's saying I was unqualified, I was incompetent, I was a moron, probably all of which was true, which was even worse. And my face started getting red, and I thought I was going to start crying. And I was supposed to be in charge of a firm, and I was just totally shamed. And I left that meeting, and I took a ride back to my office. It was about a half an hour ride. And I vowed I was never going to have another meeting like that in my life. We were never going to lose money again. We had to set up different processes, and we did. And the result of that is one of the best investment firms in the world. Certainly, the largest in our class and all that type of, good stuff. But it all stemmed from this one miserable thing, and at that time, as mementos from transactions, they had what were called tombstones, where there were basically lucite cubes, and you had something inside of it, describing the deal company A, buys company B, or this company goes public, or something like that. And so I had a special tombstone made up for that deal. It was called Edgecombe Steel, and I did it in the form of an actual tombstone. And inside it, I had a black, sort of background with some white letters, and I kept it on my desk for several decades. So despite all the successes we have, I'd never forget that one, and it's still in my bookcase 30 years later. So you find that adapting from bad things that happen is really the mark of what it takes to become successful, because bad things can take you down, or learning from those things makes you much more adaptable and stronger, and come up with new processes and approaches that protect you from whatever mistakes you made the first time.
As a result of that business success, you've been able to amass quite a very large personal wealth. How do you ensure that doesn't become a distraction? How do you stay focused on work when you're in possession of so much money?
Well, first of all, you have to be aware it could always go away. So it came, it can disappear. And the only reason it came is because everything you focus on must be perfectly done. And as you get bigger, you can never forget that. And so I believe that we're sort of like a restaurant, and we're only as good as our last meal. And if you poison your customer with a really bad meal, even if you're a famous restaurant, you won't go back to that restaurant for quite a long time. If you poison your customer twice, they never come back. And so finance has more fragility involved with it, and so every time we make a decision, it's like a complete life and death situation, and we must do it well. And so I don't really think about the financial consequences to myself. I'm just thinking about, how do we do something that's marvelous? How do we be the best in the world at what we do? And if we do that all the time, what happens is there are good things happen to you personally, but you don't think about it, because once you have your basic things in your life, your house or houses or cars or whatever they are, the rest of it is, the more you accumulate, you're going to have to give it away one way or another, and so that becomes a different phase in your life.